Mabel the Lovelorn Dwarf, Chapter 2. This crosscut was started and abandoned long before Da began his mining career, a year ago. I get it, I said, exasperated by the non-stop history lesson. I just wanted Frankie to be quiet, to let me use the monotony of work to think about what I'd experienced the other night at the movie theater. The wonder of the wizard's crystal and the beauty of Aramis. I know we're a part of a great mining tradition. Why else would I want to work here? I comb my fingers through my beard to remove most of the mine dust matting itself into the hair. I think I only made it worse, though. Right now, that mining tradition and thinking about the movie were the only reason I endured any of this, especially the monotony. Good then, Frankie said, as long as you know. Some seem to think that this is only a place to meet a mate or gain prestige. It's my job to make sure you are here for the right reasons. Frankie looked sideways at Emma, who rolled her eyes. If Frankie thought Emma's determination to find a mate was a problem, he should talk to her, not lecture me. What he should do is try and see things from the perspective of a female. The mines were the best place to find a respectable mate. Dot told me every morning that when I wasn't actually working, I needed to pay attention to the males with 2 braids in their beard. Any one of them could be my life mate. He said I should make sure that when I choose is responsible enough to carry the reputation of the Golden Axe name. But maybe Frankie was right, sort of. I was distracted, not because I was too busy thinking about the fellows. It was the movie, more specifically the movie magazine. I'd practically memorized the whole thing in the last couple of days. Learning everything there was to know about making movies, and of course, Aramis. Before work today, I'd been in the middle of reading an article about how Radier, the wizard who'd recorded the movie on his crystal, had to ride alongside the dwarves and elves and get between them during the battle sequences, risking great injury. I kept imagining myself in his place, the risks he'd taken as horses thundered past, arrows flew, and axes swung. How many near misses had there been? Had Radier needed to use his magic to protect himself? What if one of the weapons had gone astray? How much time did he get to spend with Aramis and Severin? I would rather be watching the movie again now that I knew more about how it was made. Actually, I prefer being in a movie to scratching at the stubborn rock. I couldn't make a mark in it. Frankie, just help me figure out what to do here. The large pick isn't doing anything. Really? Frankie put his ear against the rock where I'd been working and ran his fingers over the area. Come here, do what I'm doing. I patted at it a couple of times and stepped back. Do it again. Let your fingers be your eyes. Do you feel it? Feel what? Did Aramis have to put up with this kind of nonsense when making a movie? I bet he didn't. The change in the rock. There was a change? Interesting. I caressed the stone up and down, side to side, pressing into every dent and crevice, searching for the edge and feeling for a difference until I found it. Yes, where I've been working is the same hardness, but a different, rougher texture. Good. Philip, Emma, come do the same. Do you feel it? They stopped what they were doing and joined us, imitating a rock exploration. Yes, Philip said. I think so, said Emma. Frankie pushed them away from the wall. I knew it. I knew when the chief foreman assigned me here to re-explore that the emeralds I'd found weren't a one-off. Mabel, with the medium pickaxe, I want you to gently tap the rougher part. The rock cracked into thin, spidery lines like the shell of a hard-boiled egg. Finally, something different from scratching the rock. Very good, Mabel. Very, very good. You may have found something. Thank the gods I never gave up on this crosscut. Now take out your chisel and with the tip, dig in between the cracks and pull out the pieces. Be very careful. You two, watch what she's doing. Had I really found an emerald? I picked at the cracks. The outer part crumbled beneath my touch. Below the surface lay hard-packed dirt rather than stone. The mines are our cathedrals to the gods of our creation, Frankie said. Now what do I do? I didn't really think mining was boring. I'd just forgotten how fascinating it was, how much I'd loved it, especially the detailed work. Get your brush and with small strokes, wipe away the stone the same as when you were scratching it with the pick. Frankie stood beside me. his arms crossed and his fingers twitching. Either he was really happy for me or dying to get into work this wall instead of me. When we mine, we worship our creators. The treasures the mountain holds are gifts from the gods. I had found an emerald. I knew it, but I didn't want to say anything out loud until I saw it. I imagined I was in a movie with Aramis, working as miners, finding our first emerald bed. I grabbed my brush and swept at the rock. Is it real, Aramis? Have I really found my first emerald? I cleared a fairly large area of the outer shell, about the size of my upper body, and the dirt under layer. There it sat, the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Glittery, glassy, and green. It's as beautiful as you are, Aramis said to me. Frankie, my voice shook, I shook. It was too exciting to keep inside. What do you see? Frankie! Aramis! I pointed at my first emerald. Sweep a little more around it. I did, and Aramis whispered, Yes, yes, congratulations, Mabel. You found your first bed of emeralds. I dropped my brush and covered my scream. The gods accepted me and chose to bless me. Frankie squeezed me, picked me up, and spun me around. And as happy as I was to be celebrating with Frankie, I wished it was Aramis who hugged me and gave me a kiss to commemorate my find. I am so proud of you, Frankie put me down. Right, everyone, get back to work. Mabel, when you found the edges of your emerald and taken it out, keep it, a gift from the gods for your devotion. He winked, grinning from ear to ear. Frankie was so passionate, reverent even, about mining. He nearly convinced me I should never want to leave the mines for anything. I understood then why none of my brothers were interested in finding a mate. I momentarily considered abandoning my own search and removing my braids so I could join his full devotion to the mines. Unfortunately, I'd never heard of a female miner so devoted to her craft. She declared herself uninterested in mating. That was not an option open to females. To me. Maybe there was less pressure on Emma because she had an older sister, but even she had to fulfill her duty to mate and have dwarflings. As the only girl in my family, that pressure was doubled. I brushed and blew away the dust, careful not to scratch my emerald. Aramis looked over my shoulder, smiling, his eyes sparkling, his dimple deepening. He whispered to me how much he knew I would find it, how he knew I was meant to be a miner, a skilled miner, how proud he was of me, and how we'd have our own celebration at the end of the day. The emerald was bigger than my hand. I didn't think anyone could keep a gem that size, but Frankie said I could, so I put it in a side pocket on my tool bag for safekeeping. Frankie helped me excavate more of the site, chanting the whole time. I knew this would be a productive crosscut. I knew it. Give it up, they said. Not even Frankie Goldenaxe can find gems where there are none, they said. But I persisted. Mabel, I am so proud of you for being the one to find the emerald. And so earlier in your career as a miner, you're keeping the tradition in the family. I bet you've got an eye for locating gems. I appreciate your vote of confidence, but I just scratched at the rock where you told me to. Sure, but you could tell there was a change in the rock. It's the first step. So many crosscuts have been abandoned because miners don't know what to look for. They give up so easily. It's a lot of hard work, and often we don't find anything, or it can take years to get to the gems. So many will say the rock is too hard, or there is nothing there. I have the ability to spot places where we should look. If you keep in mind what you learned today about the difference in rock texture, you will go far here, Mabel. You will go far. If every day was exciting as this one, finding gems, life would be perfect. But that was only the reward for mining, for endless days of chipping and scratching at rock. And as an explorer like Frankie, it wouldn't just be days of chipping and scratching, it would be years. I loved his faith in me, and I hope the gods would forgive me for thinking this, I didn't think I wanted to spend my life in such boredom. We'd barely started on the emerald bed when the horn blew to end the day. I didn't want to stop. Frankie appreciated my enthusiasm, but assured me we could be working on this part for many days or weeks to come. Go on to the prospector to celebrate. I'll take your tools home for you. I couldn't move inside the prospector without people congratulating me on my find and asking for details on how I did it. The first request for a recounting of my tale came with an offer of a drink. Next thing I knew, I was surrounded by eager listeners. So you've got your brother Frankie's eye for exploration, said Ricky, a friend of my second eldest brother Patrick. Let's see if you've got your brother Mikey's talent for axe throwing. A contest? Suggesting I had Frankie's skill for mining was a great compliment, but a huge exaggeration, and Mikey's axe throwing skill was out of everyone's reach. Mikey had been Dwarf Games champion in axe throwing. I was too small to remember much of our family trip to the games. The only really clear memory was of the thunk of the axe sinking into the throwing post in our backyard. The rhythm of it used to lull me to sleep. Soon after he'd won the games, Mikey stopped throwing. Even so, his prowess was legendary. A contest. The room resounded with the unified shout. I glanced at Emma and Philip. Maybe they'd come up with a reason why I couldn't compete. They had a smaller group around them to hear their version of the story of my first emerald. Emma straightened her cap and tugged at her beard as she talked and accepted drinks. At the call for a contest, she looked at me, smiled, and said, "I'm in." So did Zach and Jimmy. Dwarves don't turn down challenges, and I wasn't going to be the first one to do so. "You're on," I said to Ricky. Good gods, this is going to be embarrassing. We were followed to the back of the prospector by half the patrons, including my brothers Patrick and Mikey. Likely there wasn't enough pressure on me to simply to live up to his reputation. To have him watch, this wasn't going to be just embarrassing, this was going to be mortifying. Of the 6 competitors, Emma and I were the only females. We each took a few practice throws to get a feel for the weight of the axes. As Ricky reset the target, Mikey and Patrick edged their way to the front of the crowd. I motioned to Mikey with my axe to ask if he wanted to join in. It might take the pressure off me. He shook his head, raised his mug to me, then took a sip, smiling. I hoped that if I couldn't make him proud, at least I wouldn't blow the contest and shame him. I stepped up to the marker. I held the axe at the base of the handle. Raising my arms, I closed my left eye to improve my focus. I brought the axe back, then hurled it forward, releasing it. I didn't hit the exact center of the target as Ricky and another fellow, Curtis, had, but close enough and slightly better than Zach and Jimmy. Emma's throw had hit close to the center, too. On my second try, I hit the second ring, still better than Zach and Jimmy. Emma's was well off the mark, but Zach stood at her side instructing her on her technique. My third try, I hit dead center. Emma didn't, but her throw had improved over her second. I finished third behind Ricky and Curtis. Considering they were a lot older and had more experience, I thought I had done all right. Actually, just hitting the post was a victory for me. Not bad at all, Ricky said. You've got some raw talent. Just remember, I'm the prospector's champion. Don't mind him, Curtis said. Others soon surrounded me, talking about regular contests held at the Prospector, and the new emerald bed I'd found. I'd established myself as a part of dwarven tradition as a miner. I loved it all, and yet I found myself tiring. I wanted to go home, look at my emerald, and read more of my movie magazine. Well, that was fun, I said to Emma, an hour later, after I managed to break out of the conversation. I know, her eyes glittered, and several of the fellows talking with me tonight have offered to court me. Don't worry, I only accepted offers from the few mountain dwellers among them. I hugged her. Congratulations. I hope you've been selective in whom you'll be courting. Was I supposed to be trying to get offers of courtship out of this? Did everything have to be about finding a mate? Couldn't I just enjoy myself? Oh, yeah, maybe a little too selective. Anyway, I'm going to head home. I'm exhausted. Have a good night. I'm going to try and get a few more dates before the night is up. Alone on the road home, I thought about my amazing day. Aramis, I found an emerald, I whispered, and told him everything. Having you here with me, really here, not just in my head, would have made it a perfect day. I'm proud of you, Mabel, Mikey said, catching up to me on the way home. I froze. I had to be more careful. No more talking out loud to Aramis. Wait, if Mikey heard me, he would have said something. He had only given me the biggest compliment of the night. I relaxed a little. Thanks. I thought my nerves might get the best of me. You're a golden axe through and through. I knew you could handle it. I talked with a few of my friends during the contest. We think you've got potential to go all the way with this. If you'll let me, I'd like to coach you. All the way? You mean to the dwarf games? I do. I hugged him. Mikey, my third oldest brother, axe throwing champion, thought I had enough talent to get to the dwarf games. Only the biggest sporting competition among all dwarf nations. They were held every 5 years, and the next one was coming up in just over a year. He believed in me enough to put in the time and effort to return to a sport we all thought he'd abandoned to train me. I take it you let me coach you? Yes, I squeaked with excitement as we entered the house. Mikey's old throwing post stood at one end of our back garden, and on the ground beside it was a small leather bag. The post hadn't been out here in years. I thought it had been destroyed or thrown out. He must have kept it in storage somewhere and brought it out today, which surprised me. He hadn't thrown an axe in decades. He hadn't talked about it either. I assumed something incredibly horrible or painful had happened to make him give it up, though none of us really knew why. Maybe he hadn't given up on throwing as completely as I thought. The first thing Mikey did was walk me through a series of stretches. It's important to have fluid, loose, flexible muscles, he said. Mining is terrific, but it keeps us stiff, stuck only in a few positions. To be a champion thrower, you need to keep limber. These exercises we're doing now, especially the stretches, do them every morning and night, and of course at the beginning and end of each practice. I wasn't particularly flexible, but the stretches felt pretty good after a long day of mining. Mikey assured me that with time and patience, my muscles would loosen up. After that, he had me working on building up my strength. Mining is great for shoulder strength, he said, but you need it all over to be a champion. He had me do push-ups, which I was disastrous at, only managing to do 5 proper ones. Then it was sit-ups, squats, lunges, and arm raises. He said using your own body weight for resistance is best. Finally, after endless exercises, which I think made me already pathetic, less than stout stomach shrink, I got to throw an axe. Mikey delved into the bag in front of us and took out one of his handheld throwing axes and lovingly placed the beautiful piece of craftsmanship in my hands. He'd used this axe to win the dwarf games. The jewels were inset into the handle, and the handle was varnished so it was smooth in my hand. I wouldn't feel the jewels when I released it. In the dwarf games, this axe must have been spectacular to see, spinning through the air, the gems flashing in the lantern light. You did well last night, but I want you to forget everything you did. Last night's contest never happened. What kind of talent did he see in me then, if he wanted me to forget it? Okay, it never happened. I agreed to it, but I was a little hurt. It wasn't like I was the only one in my family that showed an interest in the sport. My brothers have all bragged on more than one occasion about winning a throwing contest at the Prospector. There had to be something good in what he saw from me. Mikey had quit the sport. He never talked about it. Now, with me, his eyes were shining with such enthusiasm. It was like he'd never stopped throwing. But why? I had to know. Throwing at the tavern is fun, and you can get away with less than perfect technique, Mikey explained. To be a champion, I want you to have the best training and use the right technique from the start. So, should I never throw at the Prospector? What if someone challenges me? Of course you can throw there. You should. Though it hardly resembles true competition standards, it is good practice. The next time you throw there, you will have the best discipline and technique of all competitors. You'll stomp their asses, especially Ricky. I know he's a friend of Danny's, and I like him well enough, but he's gotten too big. He's gotten too big a head over being top thrower at the Prospector. He needs to be dethroned. So why don't you do it? I'm too old, he said, a little too quickly. I thought. Now, I want you to hold the axe at the lowest end of the handle, like that. Perfect. Hold it firm, but not tight. He wiggled it in my hand until I had the right kind of grip. Excellent. He helped guide my arm up and back so I could feel the proper angle it should be at. Then, in slow motion, he moved my arm up and around and stopped it at the exact place I should release the axe. We repeated these motions several times, slow at first, then picking up the pace. He had me continue the repetitions without his help while he watched. On my first effort, the axe thumped at my feet. I think I was lucky not to lose any toes. Mikey had me repeat the motion several more times before my second attempted throw. The axe wobbled out of my hand and landed only a little closer to the post. After several more pitiful throws, I was getting frustrated. Remember your technique, Mikey said. For now, it is more important than hitting the post. I took a moment to regain my composure before throwing. After a few more tries, I finally hit the post. It was glorious the way the axe slid from my hand, spinning once end over end, and the iron head piercing the wood with a thunk. It was the lower edge of the post, but still, it was a hit. I threw my arms up and cheered. Mikey, did you see that? I hit it. Did you see how it flew? It was so natural, so fluid. Well done, Mikey said, and with only a twitch of a smile, keep throwing. I did, and eventually hit the post again. Good, focus on your technique. What's going on here? Da yelled, thundering out of the house, as my axe bounced off the ground in front of the post. Mikey's coaching me, I said, retrieving the axe. I can see that, Da said. Mikey, a word with you, please? Of course. Don't stop, Mabel. I continued to throw, but I also listened in on their conversation. They weren't exactly being quiet about it. It's great to see you out here, son, but why are you coaching Mabel? Da, she's got talent. Yes, but why Mabel? I just said why. Mikey, Mabel just started at the mine. She needs to focus her time and energy on finding a mate. How is she going to be able to do that if she spends all her non-working hours back here alone throwing axes? Besides, she's having a hard enough time getting a stout belly, and this exercise isn't going to help. Hey, that was mean. She needs to use every asset she has, Doc continued. It's not my fault she looks like, Mikey said. Ma'am, do I look like her? When Dad said it the other day, I thought he was just being sentimental. Da, I know how important it is that Mabel find a good, respectable mate, but she has a few years to find one. With the right instructions, she can win the dwarf games. We'll have another champion in the family. Think of the honor and respect that will bring our family. This will only work in her favor. Fine, Da growled. Mabel, I turned to him. You need to eat more, especially if you're going to be training like this. Why did it always have to be about looking a certain way to attract a mate? Couldn't I just do what I enjoyed doing, look the way I look, and be loved? Yes, Da. I threw the axe another beautiful throw. If you're enjoying the adventures of Mabel Golden Axe, don't forget to subscribe to be notified every time a new video comes up. And click like, please share, and also visit sherrypeters.com if you want to get a copy of the original opening of the book.